Welcome to Marauders issue number 11. So with that said, up to this point this adventure took them to the depths of the Shuriar Empire, and all the way to an ancient mutant society that lived 2 billion years in the past, and hopes to fulfill Kate Pryde's quest to understand a mysterious map, which led Kate and her merry band of marauders on some out-of-this-world adventures. But along the way the team has pacified the threats of Archaea, Sublime, and Cassandra Nova, while gaining new allies in the Threshold 3 as well as a mutant by the name Cerebra, who hails from the far-off future of 2099. But however, the central question remains, what is the map leading to? And in this issue, we get just that, as we pick up with the leader of the Marauders, Kate Pryde, sitting alone in the Dead Mutant Cove, completely focused on the map that started this whole thing. But despite how many times she stares at it, things just won't add up. And the quote on the top of the page is just as mysterious as it ever was. For the quote reads, "The first blood spilled," which Kate rationalized in her mind to mean, "The first blood spilled between us is yours," referring back to when Cassandra killed Kate Pryde's father years ago, which ultimately was the reason why Kate left Cassandra trapped in the past, to begin with. But even with that part down, many mysteries still remain. But that was when Nightcrawler arrived on the scene. And the reason why he was there was because Kate needed someone to talk to about everything that transpired, because at this moment in time, she was at odds with what to do next, saying how she always did what was right despite it not being allowed, which included getting Krakoan medicines to those in need in spite of their governments, as well as rescuing mutants wherever they were in spite of human limitations, which included mutants from Threshold, which is crazy for her even to say, because it was so long ago that it might as well have been a myth. But due to her first-hand experiences and taking out Sublime and Archaea, as well as bringing back the Threshold 3, made it all worth it. Even though sometimes things don't go as planned, referring to her leaving mutants behind in Threshold to fight on alone as they wanted. So with Kate bringing up all her recent success, as well as everything she accomplished, things still felt as if they weren't completed. Things still felt as if she hasn't won yet. Because as she sat back and studied the past, it was nothing in comparison to actually living it. Because when you live it, it actually feels more real, sparking her to want to save them all, driving her to want to do more. But with the fear of damaging the timeline, things felt out of reach, which was something Kate couldn't come to terms with. But that was when Nightcrawler chimes in. He tells her that nothing is more powerful than an idea, which means nothing is more powerful than doing something new. Because the mutant resurrection was nothing until someone had an idea to do it. So with that said, that was when he proposed a question for Kate, and saying, is she truly out of ideas, which lit a spark from within her. So following that, we transition over to Boston, Massachusetts, where we see a gathering of individuals who follow Scratch. And Scratch is doing a ceremony, a sermon on what he perceives to be love. And the way he is doing it is by using 2 bloody hearts. 1 human heart and 1 mutant heart. And in typical Scratch fashion, he sprays blood upon the audience while praising false unity between the two. But fortunately, this crap was interrupted by a member of the Marauders, Phang. And my boy Phang is here to do some damage. And the way he will go about doing it is not by using his mutant powers. No, the way he is going to go about doing it is the old-fashioned way, by using a good old baseball bat. So while Phang is putting in work on Strack, we jump over to the South Pacific, where we see Kate Pryde and Thea having a conversation about something Kate wanted to run by her, because Kate had an idea that could change everything if correct. But in order to explain the idea, she had to go back to the beginning, by saying she found Threshold and saved Thea's friends because of a box and a map. The same map that pointed her to a monster. The same monster that was responsible for killing millions, including Kate's own father. But that wasn't it, because the box that they used was a vessel. A vessel much like a seed that brought life into their world. And on the side of the seed was Kate's name written in Krakoan. Which brings us to the idea that grew in Kate's mind. Because she tells Theo, what if Threshold wasn't the first mutant society, but rather Krakoa was? What if Krakoa was the first civilization all along? But before they could truly ponder the gravity of this idea, they are interrupted by Psylocke. And Psylocke and her team are on a mission of their own, and by the looks of it, things are all over the place. Psylocke reports that the grain storehouse was destroyed and the people here are very hungry. So of course food and water could go a long way towards healing spirits. And on top of that, Psychic Recon confirms a mutant explosion of some kind, so she called up Triage. and Triage did well responding to Nature Girl's oil attack, as he tends to the wounded. And as for Somnus, he's too busy wrapping the survivors in sweet pleasant dreams. And as for Bishop, he was in Santo Marcos absorbing huge amounts of bioelectricity. Because in the beginning they thought it was just a reactor malfunction, but in actuality it ended up being a mutant by the name Albert Lewis, aka Feedback. And unfortunately he was imprisoned by an organization by the name of Department H. And they was intending to sell his body parts after he died. But due to his mutant abilities that couldn't be possible because he started to leak out bioelectricity. So with a heavy heart Bishop delivered the death blow to stop the outburst of energy. So once everything was done, Aurora contacted Kate and Thea and say that she overheard Kate pitch to Thea and it would explain a pre-human society of mutants. But the question moving forward is how could they be positive that that's the case? At which Kate replies by saying the only way to find out is through a leap of faith, the same leap of faith they used to bring back the Threshold 3. But in order to do that, we will need to finish up here and put Feedback inside the resurrection queue and meet back up in Genosha. So following that we skip over to the Day of Truth, the day that Kate enacted her idea. For Kate, Tempo, Bishop, and Psylocke meets up in Hammer Bay, Genosha. Because no mutant alive will ever forget where they were when Cassandra Nova almost got her genocide. She said I spilled the first blood between us. But she did when she killed my father. On this spot. So why'd I scribble that on a map? Why will I, someday? Because I'll read it as a map to Threshold. And maybe it was. But not how I thought. We couldn't save Genosha. We couldn't save Threshold. They even trapped Cassandra in the past in a cage in Threshold. But what if the cage was built here? Not of bars, but of ideas. Cassandra didn't get us all. But she did kill millions. What if that loss could give life to billions? What if Genosha is Threshold? And with those words we transition with Phang doing his thing. And Phang is indeed doing his thing. Because Scratch stood no chance against him. Because at one point in the fight, Scratch managed to chop off 3 of Phang's fingers just to be punched in the face by the very same hand moments later. And the reason why he is doing this is because Phang is looking for information on Brimstone. But that's when Scratch lets it slip that Brimstone is playing it smart by sending messengers out to different locations to gather new follower in his name, as well as the fact that he knows where everyone is supposed to report to, which was all Phang needed to hear in order to find Brimstone Love. So with that news we hop back over to Kate and the gang. And when we get there we see Psylocke ask Kate if she's suggesting that they would be the one who will create Threshold. In which Kate replies that they was always going to be the one who was responsible for making it. Because she does listen to Tempo's time talk. So with that said, Kate steps off the ledge as she continues to speak, saying, "The King Crimson tried and failed to eradicate the Thresholders. For them, that loss was the first blood spilled. But what about Krakoa? This was Nova's first blood spilled. Genosha. Its mutants are up for resurrection, but the humans aren't. And all the bodies are still here. So why are we settling for a graveyard?" So as the team floats to the ground, Bishop begins to smile as he already knows where Kate is going with this idea. Because he states that it's hard to say. I showed up a long time ago. And since I've been here there have been a lot of variables that changed since I got here. And because of that he wasn't sure that this moment would ever come, even if he read it as a kid. So once they got on the ground, Kate began to explain what their next moves would be by saying, Krakoa means trying new things. Because our former enemy is now our island home. A nation died here. And here, a new nation could be born in its memory with one hell of a mutant circuit. But they were not going to do it alone, because Kate obviously invited some more friends to help. And the first of those friends was Polaris, due to her expertise in physics. Which unfortunately wasn't enough to win Tempo over to help. Because Tempo states that physics is just the start of it. Because we still don't know that this is where the Threshold seed is built. In which Kate replies by saying she is right, we don't know if this is the spot. But if she wants she could always use her power to gaze into the timeline and see if it works. Which was something Tempo didn't want to hear because she snaps back and states, if you gaze into the abyss, you run the risk of erasing the future that would have been. Which was exactly what Kate was expecting Tempo to reply with, because she continued by saying, then why not take our future into our own hands? By creating a genetic database. They could use Polaris to shape it and Cerberus can scan the DNA in the ground, plus a bit more. And with that DNA they can fill the box. After that they could use Tempo's power to send it back in time. Then time, nature, and evolution can bring forth threshold and time. So following that breakdown, we see Kate's second friend she invited, Wicked. Because with Wicked they can ask the spirits of Genosha if it is even okay for them to do this in the first place. And finally, the last friend she invited to bring it all together was Aurora. Because Cable dropped her there for a reason that is yet to be discovered. So with them all here, they were still missing just one more person, and that was Cerebra. Because according to Kate, she was running late somewhere in San Francisco. So once she arrives, the show would be ready to begin. So with the details laid out before everyone, Wicked goes up to Kate and states that this is quite a play to make without the council's knowledge. Which Kate replies that it was never up to them to begin with, but rather up to them, referring to the ghost of her father. The same father she hoped she made proud. So with that established, this comic ends with Phang and Mr. D breaking down Brimstone Love's door ready to wreck shop. For Phang has a lot of unfinished business to take care of between them. So with that said, this issue comes to an end.